Anything. My name is Nelda Schulte, and I'm joined tonight by Gil Donkersgood in BC, Father Christmas on the right, and Donna Monkhouse, who's the Executive Director of the Alberta Residential Landlord Association, or ARLA, from Edmonton. Welcome, Donna, and welcome, Gil.
Thank you for having me.
My online business, neldaschulte.com, helps do-it-yourself landlords with reasonably priced and a lot of free resources. And the reason that I do what I do is because I want to help a lot of the landlords not step in the landmines that I stepped in. So you can bypass them if you are educated and if you are knowledgeable. You can bypass most of them. And that's why I do this business. And I also started hosting these programs and offering landlords information because there are so many experts who are there to support you. But if you don't know about them, then how are they going to support you? So to that end, that's why I host these Ask Nelda Almost Anything programs every 2 weeks. And tonight, we are going to have an introduction to the Alberta Residential Landlord Association, or ARLA. And our expert, Donna, is going to tell us all about what ARLA does to support landlords and what they can do to help you in the way of resources. So I'm just going to jump right in. And Donna, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up with ARLA.
Well, I kind of feel like a dinosaur, actually. So I've been in the industry a very long time. I had my daughter. When I had my daughter, I had no job, and I walked into an office, a property management office, and I said, "Do you have a job that I could do?" And he goes, "Can you answer the phone?" And I went, "I can do that." And that's how I started in the industry back in 1982. So been around a while, got my CPM, my certified property manager, worked for some of the large end companies out there, the private sector. I worked in the condo sector. I worked in the commercial and industrial sector. I did public. My last job was in the public sector. Working for the government is very different than working for any asset manager or owner ever. That was one of the toughest ones I ever did, I believe. And so during my time, though, I was always a ARLA board member. So in 1999, I became an ARLA board member, and ARLA was formed in '94. So I've been an ARLA board member, and when the executive director was retiring out, I think I was kind of ready to kind of slow myself down a bit and use my knowledge to help a lot of other people, a lot of landlords out there. And I've made some great friends in the industry and great connections. And I was offered the job at ARLA in 2019, and couldn't be a better fit for me. It's more my going into my retirement day kind of job. So I figure I got another 10 years there at least.
Oh, that's great. That's
I
great.
hope. We'll see.
When people think about retiring, they think of retiring in a couple of years, but that's quite a ways out, actually, Donna.
Yeah, you know what? I think I can go till I'm older. I think it'll be okay. We'll try.
Yes. Well, you're of sound mind and body, so I say go for it.
Yeah, God willing, I'll do what I can.
Yes, good for you. So what is one act that landlords need to know when they're running a residential rental business?
Oh, please. The Residential Tenancies Act and the ministerial orders that go with it. You know, I was this many years old, I think, before I realized that that was a real book and you could open it up and actually read about things like abandonment and fixed term leases and and evictions and all of that. All of that's in the RTA, and those two, if you know those two take you to the other acts you need to know. Minimum housing standard, the Public Health Act, the Privacy Act, you know, they lead you in that direction. So if you don't know the RTA, then please read the RTA, go through the RTA. It exists, it's real.
And it's readable too, in my
And
experience.
it's, you know what, it's pretty simple. It's not hard to read. It's more
No.
hard to navigate.
Yeah, it's not very exciting. Like
No.
if you're having trouble getting to sleep one night, bring the RTA to bed with you.
Oh, the ministerial orders are worse. They make you sleep. They they during COVID they were quite they were very interesting to follow. They kept changing and changing and changing and changing. So now they put some of that in stone in the ministerial orders. So just got to
I
know
would
what's
suggest that if you need to read the RTA, you're probably going to be sleepless anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Good one.
We also have a handbook, which is it's an abridged version. It's a little bit easier to
Yep.
find your way
Yep.
around. I really
Yep.
like the handbook. I usually go there first, and then if I really need fine detail, I go to the RTA.
Yep.
But RTA aside, what's ARLA then? What does ARLA do?
ARLA is the Alberta Residential Landlord Association, and started in 1994, and it was started by 4 landlords out there who were trying to get the government's attention on a few issues landlords were having, and nobody would listen to just one person. So they joined hands as 4, and they started what used to be the Edmonton Apartment Association. So once that in 2015, we changed the name to expand out because we have members all across Alberta. So they brought in the Alberta Residential Landlord Association. So we just did a name change. Everything else stayed the same. So we are a membership-based, not-for-profit landlord association dedicated to strengthening the residential rental industry by advocating, uniting, networking, and educating our professional members, connecting with our preferred service members, making sure that we have a good community of landlords that are learning and asking for help and just making the industry a whole lot better. So we have a lot of fun, love our landlords, love our preferred service members. We've got a great community and we do a lot of good things.
So what resources are available to landlords or members with ARLA?
Our brochure on our website, www.albertalandlord.org, O-R-G. Don't go to the other ones. There's other ones out there. Don't go there. If there's no picture of me on that website and no phone number and no address, you're at the wrong place. There is another one out there that doesn't have a contact information. So we have resources. We sell landlord forms to our members, but at exclusive pricing. You get discounted insurance rates. You can take advantage of exclusive offers from our members. We do online training, so I'll talk about that later in a bit here. We do a lot of seminars, webinars, and luncheons on a monthly basis. We had our first trade show last year, which I was really pleased with. The outcome was great. Nelda was there. I'm sure you had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I don't know about anybody. I had fun. But so we're hoping to have another one this year upcoming. Our annual general meeting, we have a huge Christmas party we put together. We network and get our members together as often as we can. And it benefits the service members and it benefits landlords because nothing better than talking to somebody who understands you. So I know one of our members was in my office the other day and he said, I just love coming here. And I said, why? And he says, because you get me. You get what I do. And I went, I did what you do. I know what you're going through. So it's kind of nice to have that with the membership.
It is. And you also offer workshops with people like me. I've done workshops for ARLA before too on specific topics.
We try to make sure the education's good for everybody, right? Yeah. So, you know what? I have an education committee that I expanded this year to try to get more ideas on educating, bringing in some great luncheon speakers, just trying to get everybody interested in something. And so that's my goal for next year.
Yeah, you always have to keep learning as a landlord because there's always something new out there that when I was at the Ontario Landlords Watch conference, there was a woman who has, I don't know, 10,000 properties. She has a property management business in Ontario, in the Greater Ontario area.
Yep.
And she said that some of the organizations that were trying to get their clients in who were high risk or maybe out of jail or whatever, were actually creating fictitious profiles for their clients that when she tracked them, when she does her own vetting, everything was fine. So they actually created a fictitious person. And then when that person got into the unit and they started having problems with them, they discovered it was a different person than the one that was represented on the application. And I was stunned by that. A government organization lying. She said, it's not just one. There are a few of them who are doing this at this point.
Wow.
So that's something I didn't know about, and it wouldn't even occur to me.
Wouldn't occur to me either.
So that's the kind of stuff, these types of things help you find out. And the other thing I like about ARLA and about Facebook groups like mine, where there are a lot of really experienced landlords who have been above board for 20, 30 years and have single families, multi-families, all kinds of stuff, is that you're getting a good answer. You're getting a legit answer. Because, excuse me, you can go on to any number of these Facebook groups, and I see people doing this all the time. They have a problem with their tenant. They go on and they say, I've got a problem with my tenant and I want to evict them. What do I do? And everyone jumps in and they're all giving them advice. But, where are you? Where are you located? Because there are rules for landlords, every place that you're located. What's your location? Yeah. What's your country? What's your province? What's your municipality? What's the reason? What's the infraction? Because it can go off in so many different directions. So you need to make sure that who you're asking for advice can give you legitimate advice.
Yep. I've seen that. I've seen that many times. Yeah. I have had people in there that, so I'll get members calling me going, Donna, you got to jump in on this conversation. They're going sideways. And I'm like, just say, please contact albertalandlord.org at this phone number, and she will direct you to the right people to get the right answer. Mm-hmm. Please stop answering, please. So a lot of our members are in those groups and they will say, please contact the Alberta Residential Landlord Association. They will help you with the right answer. And so I try personally to stay out of those groups because I just get frustrated. I'm just like, I can't believe you said that. That was back before the RTA, back when I first started in the industry, where you could, tenant wasn't paying their rent, you went and changed the lock and threw their furniture on the lawn, and that was okay. Yeah. I remember doing, things like that were okay to do. You don't do that anymore, right? So I don't even think, I can't even believe I did some of that stuff back then, but that's what you were instructed to do. So
I remember one of our events, we had a landlord say, I just grabbed a baseball bat and went up to their place. I mean, we said,
did you ever shut the water off? Did you ever shut the water off to the unit?
Yes.
And the power?
Yeah. Yeah. We had I was living in a housing cooperative and I was on the board. And this woman had moved out. When she moved out, her brother and her mother, who were effectively homeless, moved their stuff into her place, which was right across the hallway from mine. And I was looking at this, and I was on the board of people I was on the membership committee who approved people, and I knew that they weren't approved. And I got on the phone and I called the president and said, "You wouldn't believe what's happening." I was like, we're both freaking out. He just shut all their utilities off, and they moved.
Oh, you see, but back then you could do that. Don't do that now.
No, don't do that now.
But I see a lot of that.
At the time, we got rid of them in a quick hurry. We didn't have to get an eviction service, and we didn't have to call the police. Blah blah blah. So yeah. But yes, that was then. This is now. Yeah.
And so the other thing that you sort of touched on that, or didn't quite touch on, but we should touch on, and this doesn't replace a call to ARLA, but it's important to know the documentation that you need for any of these events as well, and the timing that you have to have. So it's one thing to say, okay, I can do a 24-hour notice, but what has to be on that notice, for example? All these details, stuff that's in the RTA, but it's if you need some guidance, this is where people in your Facebook group may not have the knowledge, the wisdom to give you the exact details, and those details will kill you if you don't follow them.
Absolutely.
Those forms are on the ARLA site. You can buy them at ARLA. So if your 14-day notice, your warning letter, your demand letter. Absolutely. I don't have any of those on my site. I have landlord forms on my site, but I don't deal with the eviction section of it. I let ARLA and CRA and the other membership organizations deal with that themselves.
Yeah, we have all the forms. And I recommend if somebody comes in and says to me, I don't know what to do, I recommend taking our RTA fundamentals workshop course. It's 3.5 hours. It's open to the public as well as our membership. You'll pay you pay a little bit more for being a non-member, but it just walks you through the RTA and it goes through those timelines like 24-hour, 14-day, 365-day. It takes you through at different things you need to know, like how long do I have before I have to return a security deposit? And, I get answers from 2 days to 6 months. I had one the other day where they're still working on the statement of account and it's been over a year. I've got a small problem with this one. No. So I get some of that. So I recommend you take that. And then we also have an online Sweet Smarts course, an online RTA training. It's all online. It's 7 modules. It's self-instructed. You do it on your own. It's a great course. And it just walks you through some of those things you think you can do, but you can't. Like, please don't change the locks if you don't have possession of the unit. If you don't have keys in your hand and that kind of thing, please don't change the locks. This walks you through with a fellow who's rented a suite, and the fellow's sitting in the unit and it's empty, but he's sitting there. He refuses to leave till the very last minute. And this guy wants to change his locks. No, let him go. You'll be okay. So it's another great one to take too. And you can get all of that information off of our website as well. But those two are both available for members and non-members. And they're both invaluable. Like you can find resources on our webpage as well. I try to put as many resources on our webpage as I can. Every order is on there. Every Tenancy Act is on there. Your Tenancy 101 book is on there. There's what to do when a tenant doesn't, when a tenant's being unruly. What kind of letters do you give? There's just so much valuable information on our website, and it's open to the public. I don't lock that off. I don't think it's information that I don't want to share. I think every landlord should be educated, and I want to be able to share that information. So,
do you have my book on your resources?
I do not have your book on my resources. Do you have a link to your book?
I do.
Okay, send me the link.
I didn't see that coming at all.
I didn't either. Just a sec. I read that. I read that.
And Donna, if you take a picture of yourself with the book, there's a special place in heaven for you.
Oh,
nothing to do with eating your vegetables and being nice to people. It's buying a book and taking a picture.
but check our website has, somebody will call me and say, I had a death in a unit. I will lead you to the website, pull that document up and read it. It's an awesome document. It gives you numbers to the public trustee's office and everything. After the flood, there's my favorite one. After the flood, a big flood in my unit. I can't live there anymore. What am I supposed to do? There's a document on that. How do you treat the tenant? There's a document on that. So it talks about the frustration of tenancies. It talks about all kinds of things on there. Everything is on there, even a form for snow removal logs. I put as much information there. A telephone script. There's one on there. So just check it out. There's a whole section for bed bugs as well. Bed bugs and cockroaches. And if you're a landlord, pretty sure you've seen these little creatures.
In there.
Yeah. So a lot of I was going to say a lot of times people are listening to these shows and they're like, well, the death of the tenant, that's not going to happen to me. Bed bugs, that's not going to happen to me. Gil had a tenant pass away in his unit very recently.
There you go.
And this was not an old person.
It was very sad, actually.
It's very sad. It's sad and it's terrifying in some cases. If you have your site people don't know, they don't know what to do, and they walk into the unit, and I'm like, no, please don't ever do that. So you need to make sure you put the authorities in there before you go in there, right? So there's
or if
all
you think
these
somebody
things
has
too,
passed
but-
away. Yeah, if you think someone's passed away, get authorities.
You betcha. I would, and like I say before, if you have one unit or you have 5,000 units, you have the same issues.
Yes, you do.
You have the same issues. Death of a tenant, don't pay my rent, made a mess in the unit. I've dealt with them all. So it's like,
and the bed bugs thing, that one comes up fairly often.
Yeah.
We had a property management business, especially with condos and apartments, because one unit gets it and then and especially if the property management company, the in-house property management for the condo unit doesn't want to deal with it, they don't want to admit that there's a problem, you can't get rid of them.
I've actually lived that in my own unit, or in my own, when I was renting in Vancouver. I was in a huge building and it got completely infested, and I ended up burning all my stuff and moving because
I would too.
The landlord actually, initially, he didn't even want, they started fumigating the building without telling other tenants that they were doing it because they didn't want to have a mass exodus.
Yeah. There was such a fear at the beginning when I first found them, and I brought them to ARLA to a board meeting, and I said, guys, I recently had the pest control company come in and I have these things, bed bugs. Back then, when I first had bed bugs in I think it was 2004, was my first bed bug experience. You had to get a magnifying glass to see them.
Mm-hmm.
They were minute. They were tiny. They've evolved now where you can walk into a unit and spot them in 20 seconds. They're right there in your face, right? They're huge. They've evolved so much from back then to today that now if you don't see you have bed bugs, there's a problem, right? So, but I tell the landlord, you have a duty to treat that unit. You have
Yeah.
to take care of the problem. Don't blame anybody. Don't blame anybody
No,
right now.
Yeah.
no, blaming doesn't really
Take
help.
care of the problem.
Yeah, we had landlords who they wanted to blame the tenants, or they think it was a specific tenant, and they'd say, if you get bed bugs one more time, you're out. Well, how can you prove that it came from that one tenant?
You're right.
You know, anybody, you could put your purse down in a restaurant on the floor, and
Schools.
or sitting on a sofa or something with fabric clothes on, and bring them home yourself. I mean, you don't know where they come from.
Nope. The kids in school hang their coats up on those little coat racks, grade 1 to 6. Everybody shares that same little row of coats. I saw many of that come home like that. Or the guy who works in Fort McMurray who used to bring his bag home every three. He came home every 3 weeks and he dropped his bag in the middle of the floor, and he, his wife would wash it or whatever, and back he went out. Every time he came into town, the unit got bed bugs, more and more and more, until finally I went one day and I said, he was home, and I said, is this bag always here? And she goes, oh no, my husband works in Fort McMurray. And it was ding, 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 ding. Here you go. Right. So we found the source, but that it was bad up there now. So that's kind of a little bit more under control now. At least we have an idea. We know what we're looking for. We know what to do. So that's evolved even in how we treat that a long way.
Yeah.
Cockroaches are just another story. That's just a whole another ball of wax. I get that call a lot too.
Yes.
Sorry, what was that again? I didn't hear what you said.
Cockroaches are another story.
Yeah.
Cockroaches.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one.
Oh gosh, I was in Mexico. The biggest cockroach came in my room. I screamed. That guy had to run in and get rid of it. And I was in Mexico. Here, he jumped out of the dishwasher at me, and I freaked out. I was gone. They are ugly. They are ugly creatures.
And they fly.
Oh.
And they can squish into small spaces.
Yep.
Yes. When I lived in the United States, there was never a place I lived in that didn't have cockroaches.
Yeah.
There was never any place that didn't have cockroaches.
Yep.
So if you weren't really clean and you didn't put all your stuff away in drawers and cabinets and stuff, and then actually, I in my house in the summertime, I always have an ant infestation in the springtime, so I put out ant traps and stuff. And then I saw this red thing going skittering around in my closet, and I thought, it doesn't look like an ant. It's too fast and it's too red. And I looked a little closer, and it was a cockroach. And I thought, like, I'm really clean. I clean everything out. I do huge spring clean twice a year. But I mean, they can come in on cardboard boxes. They can come in on a shipment of grapes. So I put out traps and I caught them very quickly, and
they were coming in on rice, like in rice bags. I see that was a big one.
Cockroaches will eat anything.
Yeah.
So yes, it freaked me out at the time, but not as badly as it did when I first moved to the United States. And I remember opening the bathroom door and going, They were everywhere. They were everywhere. Floor to ceiling.
The whole hotel heard me. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a big, but you can control them here in Alberta because it's cold. And if you follow proper procedures, proper protocols, if you can get your tenants to follow them, then you can keep things under control as you can with bed bugs. So yeah, anyway, I was going to ask you, what are some of the common questions that tenants ask you, but we already talked about bed bugs and cockroaches.
Yeah. Tenants call. I don't respond to tenants. I forward them to tenant support services with the city of Edmonton. I give them their number, or I put them through to Service Alberta. Service Alberta is extremely busy lately, extremely busy. They even have a answering on their telephone. I believe it says, we're too busy to take your call today. Call back tomorrow. And that's sometimes on at noon. So they are extremely busy there right now. I actually, sitting on the board there at the Service Alberta, I get the stats of how many calls and things like that. So it's just unreal what they're getting right now. So we actually get calls from landlords that have gone down to Service Alberta or the RTDRS office, and they send them back to our office so that I can walk them through the right forms they need. And well, most of the time they become members because I need them to be members. My opinions and my knowledge is for our membership. So I try to explain that, you need to be a member, right? So 99% they become members, but I had one guy the other day, he came in with a stack like this of paperwork he had. And I'm like, not one lease was anything I would even look at. It was like, so I helped him. Anyhow, it worked. He called me today and he said, thank you very much. His tenant was out and it was okay. And so if I can do that and get somebody else to come and get educated, I'm quite happy with that.
So yeah, I was going to mention that if you call Service Alberta,
Yep.
the landlord, they will just quote the RTA. They will say,
Absolutely.
this page, this section 15.1.6, this is what
Yep.
it said. That's all they're going to tell you.
Yep.
They're going to ask your name. So they document your name, what organization you're from, your phone number, the date, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
If you call ARLA, they will tell you the act. They'll say, okay, where are you at? What's going on?
Yep.
You know, here's when we looked at all these court cases that happened over the last few years, this is kind of how they worked. And this is kind of how they fell. So if you go in this direction, this could happen. If you go in that direction, that happens. So you're going to get opinions and you're going to get history from ARLA.
They call me, I help them with that.
Yeah, you will not get any of that
call.
from Service Alberta, though. Service Alberta.
Oh, no, Service Alberta won't give you,
they'll
you know, like
the act, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
I
as a
get
landlord,
help.
you need more than that.
Yeah.
At times.
They call and I'll bounce some ideas and let them vent a little bit and run through some ideas. Like the other day I had a lady call me. So I have a tenant who came in. I was taking his application and I told him I was going to do a credit check. Before I could say anything, Donna, he said, I have bad credit. I'm going through an ugly divorce. And she went, oh. And so she phones me up. She goes, what do I do? And I said, well, this is where you're going to have to go by your gut. This is where you're going to have to say, you know, check the other references, check his employment, make sure he's been there a while, check his make sure he's working, make sure he's got a good bank account, make sure he seems honest. So he came back the next day and he brought his 2 kids with him to look at the home. And so she felt entitled. So she brought him in. She said, I'm going to give him a chance, but you're not going to get that opinion or history. So if you call me and you say, Donna, I have these 2 tenants are fighting, what can I do? Well, there really isn't an RTA, anything in the RTA that says, you know, try this, try this, try this. So I have some tried and true methods that might work, some opinions, certainly not legal advice. And I make sure they know that I am not legal advice. Legal advice, you go to the people that understand that better. But I have history and background there that I can help with some of these ideas and bounce back ideas. And I'll walk through things like the common questions I get. My tenant just left after the year lease expired. Now what? I said, did you talk to them before they left? No. Did you know they were leaving? No. I said, well, they can leave. It's the end of a fixed term lease. It's like, what? And they always say, what? Right? And I say, yeah, I was this year's old when I learned that one too, but that's right. And so that's one. My tenant wants to break a lease. What are my options? Right? So you know what? If you want to be okay, you say, well, I'll make you know what? I can charge you effectively as per the RTA, all the rent to the end of the term of the lease agreement. But if you have somebody who just moved in 3 months and has to leave, that's a lot of rent.
Yeah.
You know, you have to try to rent the unit and you have to do that. But maybe you want to negotiate with the tenant. Maybe you want to say, you know what, you signed a fixed term lease. You know, you try to be a decent human being as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no sense gouging anybody. You're not going to get any further ahead, and you got to do your best that way. But that's
and sometimes life does throw curves at a person that they don't have a choice.
Absolutely.
You know, there can be a death in the family. There can be a sudden loss of a job. There's
Things
all these
happen. Things happen. You're right, Gil. Things happen, and you can't. It's always not black and white. And I used to tell that to my staff all the time. There's sometimes a little gray, and I know people don't like to hear that there's sometimes a little gray, but sometimes you have to have a little bit of heart. Like I don't know, maybe it's age that brought me this far, but it's a little bit of heart sometimes.
When I had the death in my unit, the gentleman had a girlfriend he was living with, and she was the unfortunate person who found him. And I offered her, like I wasn't going to be the guy who threw her out of her apartment right after, you know, like you can't, because he was a breadwinner too. So I did offer her like to stay for free for a bit, but she turned it down because I think it was just too hard for her to be in that property. But I mean, yeah, sometimes you just gotta be human, and you gotta understand.
You were kind. The surviving spot or the surviving person can usually stay, but they still have to pay, right? So you were very kind. That's harsh sometimes.
Well, again, I
That was
wasn't going
good.
to be that guy.
That was good of you. That was good of you. But you're right. Is sometimes you have to be kind. I get my other one was I had a gentleman come in and many come in and say, somebody keeps talking to me about they quote this RTA, this RTA. What is the RTA?
Oh,
And
no.
again, I can't, and I sometimes I shake my head and I go,
Well,
oh. Or a move-in inspection. My tenant left me all this damage, blah blah blah, and I'll say, where's your move-in? A what? Where's your move-in inspection? Well, I didn't do a move-in inspection. Okay, well,
you're hooped.
you're you're hooped. You're not getting anything. So it's like you have to, if you, it's to protect you as well as the tenant. Like you have to understand that a lease agreement is going to protect both of you.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
move-in inspection is going to protect both of you. Documenting things and keeping records of things is going to protect you. If you don't make a record of things you've been doing, you might as well forget about it, right? In the court, the RTDRS always says is you have to prove, the landlords have to prove they're right over proving the tenant is wrong. So you know what? Have your ducks in a row. So
Yep, and the processes are all outlined in various places, including ARLA. I mean, it's and what Nelda says is she wants to help people avoid landmines, and this is one of the ways, just by going to the people who know what they're doing,
yeah,
they'll
call.
avoid landmines. Yeah.
Yeah, call.
Yeah,
I
and
was
try
telling.
to it on your own and like actually I mentioned this on a podcast I did to a realtor. If you're really having trouble with something and you're trying to figure something out on your own and you're struggling with it, that's when you need to talk to people who are in the know, really experienced landlords who follow the rules, membership organizations who know the rules and can listen to you and are willing to offer you some advice.
Absolutely.
For instance, scams.
Oh.
People get scammed because something sounds too good to be true, but they're kind of in a desperate situation. They want to rent out a property and then they jump at it. Now, if they had talked to their fellow colleagues or ARLA or people in my Facebook group, because I've got a lot of landlords who've been in the business for 20 and 30 and 40 years, people would say, oh, whoa, wait, but if you just go ahead and you try and rent it out on your own, you're probably not going to get a very good result. So if something is kind of sending up a little bit of a red flag for you, definitely talk to people about it.
Please. Don't try to solve your problems by yourself. I just want to say thanks, Kate.
Yes, thank you.
ARLA president is on there. I'm like, thanks, Kate. It's a great conversation. Thanks.
Yes. So support is so important when you're in any kind of a business, especially when you're a landlord, because you're in your own little silo and you need to know what resources are there to support you and which ones are the good ones to support you. So obviously ARLA is one of them.
Yeah.
So
I'll help. We have many people that own 1 or 2 units, many. And you know what? They don't, it's not a big expense for a membership, but I've had people call back and go, that membership is invaluable to us. It's invaluable to us. Just knowing that we can call and bounce an idea off of somebody who's as experienced and or sends us in the right direction. So it's invaluable. Like having that resource to call is, wonderful. And our service members are out there too. Like our service members are all on our website. We promote them like crazy. When people call, we'll say, here's the 3 people we have that do evictions and bailiff services. Here they are. Please give them a call. Like plumbers and all of that. These people have come to us. They want to belong to a professional association. They're good people. They do good work for a value for your dollar. And so I push them every day as well, right? So members call still and say, where do I find the member list? I'll go, well, let me just send it to you. It's also in my tagline, in my email signatures. So our preferred service member list is always in my tagline.
In an ideal world, as a landlord who belongs to an organization, if you follow the rules, you'll never realize just how valuable that organization is because you'll never have the issues that are going to cost you a pile of money to deal with.
Yeah, and real estate mistakes have legal ramifications and they have huge financial ramifications. So,
and they also have they have motivation implications as well. You might decide you want to quit after one bad experience.
get that too. I'm selling my unit. I'm done with this. I get that a lot. I have one fellow. He's got a beautiful little building behind the stadium up there. It's a beautiful little building. He's had that building for 20 plus years. He loves it. He loves his tenants. He has his own way of doing things. But I tell him, you can't do that anymore. And he goes, but I've been doing this for 20 plus years, Donna. He said, I'm moving. I'm moving to Mexico. I'm selling my unit. I'm moving to Mexico. He says.
I can't stop you. Yeah.
I know they're you know what, we have, like I said again, we have a great community of landlords. They're awesome. They're awesome.
So Donna, you mentioned fixed and periodic leases, and this is something that always astounds me that people don't know what a fixed and a periodic lease is. But why don't you give us the nutshell version for the
So
listeners?
a fixed term lease has a start date and it has an end date. Starts on the 1st of May, ends on the 30th of April. That's it. If that tenant wants to vacate at the end of that fixed term lease, they can walk out the door and not tell you anything. You'll go the next day to collect rent on the 1st of May, and they're already moved out. You have to refund their security deposit because they're gone. Okay. A fixed term lease is also something that if you don't want them as a tenant at the end of that term of the lease, say they weren't a good tenant, say there was that issue, you don't have to renew them. You can go to them. You don't even have to go to them. You can go on the last day of the month and do them. Tell them they're to get out. You're not re-renting to them. Not polite to do. I always recommend 60 days or 30 days at minimum, saying, you know what, I'm really sorry, we're not going to be renewing your lease agreement. You want to give somebody an opportunity to find another home, but you as a landlord don't have to renew either. I always tell landlords that call and say, the tenant's not going to vacate at the end of the term of their lease. What should I know? First thing you should know is if you're getting an automatic deposit into your bank account from that tenant, stop it. Because as soon as you accept money, you've now entered into a periodic tenancy. So if you take rent after that lease is expired, you are now in a month-to-month tenancy period. So you want to shut that off real quick. So if anything, that's what I'll tell you right now. Here's what you need to read. Now you need to go from there. Periodic tenancy is month-to-month. It says you can only raise the rent once a year anyhow. I'm not a fan of month-to-month leases.
They're harder to end.
Oh, they're impossible to end half the time. You better have all your documents and ducks in a row. It better be a substantial breach that you have well documented. So there's all of that go with that. I'm not a fan. If you're unsure of a tenant, sign a 6-month fixed term.
Yep.
Tell them that at the end of the 6 months, you'll go in and check on them again and make sure everything's okay. If it is, you'll sign another 6 months. Fixed term doesn't have to be a year.
No.
A fixed term can be a shorter period of time if you're trying to test it. Month to month, you can do if that's what you choose to do, but I'm not a fan. It just keeps going and going until either the tenant ends it with a 30-day notice or the landlord has a substantial breach on the tenant or non-payment of rent.
Yeah, or if you want to end it, if there's no, like you only have 5 reasons you can end a periodic tenancy. The RTA only allows you 5 reasons, and so you need to know what those 5 reasons are so that you can end the tenancy and give the proper amount of notice. The notice is always what trips me up. I always have to keep reading and rereading it because
I do too.
in Fort Mac, there were week-to-week periodic tenancy.
Yep.
So for a week-to-week, that's easy. The landlord gives a week, the tenant gives a week. For month-to-month, the tenant gives you 30 days. You have to give the tenant 90 days.
Depends, though. No, you can't get a tenant out on a 90-day unless you have a reason.
Yes,
one of the unit is sold. Yeah, one of the unit is sold. You're demolishing. I think it's demolishing. If you're renovating, you have to give them 365 days.
Oh, yes.
There's all those reasons. Unless you have a substantial breach, getting out a periodic tenancy is not as easy as we like to think.
Not at all.
Most landlords think you can give 90 days and they have to leave, period, with no reason, but that's not true.
Yes, so you need to know tons of rules when you're doing a periodic lease. And
actually, if I can just throw this into lots of tenants who sign, well, we've experienced it, who sign fixed term leases think you still have to give them notice to leave. This is not the case, but it may be hard to convince them of that. So it's very clear to make that very clear at the outset so that they understand that And the other thing I recommend, and I agree with you on this one, check in 60 or 30 days before the end of the lease and just talk about what your intentions are.
Yep.
Find out from the tenant, because if it's 30 days away and you know the place is going to be empty, now you can start showing it.
And the upside to that too is at the end of that fixed term lease, you can walk in on the last, or you can sign their new lease. Say you go in on the maybe 5 days before the end of the month, if they've agreed to sign a new lease, you can say, oh, by the way, the rent's going to be $700 more a month. I've seen that. I've had that happen, where it's like, are you kidding me? Well, no, don't you want to stay then? No, I'm not staying then. I'm out of here. But there's that happens too. They'll raise the rent without giving you a heads up. Again, common courtesy, tell them that the rent's going to go to this much at the end of the term. Give them a heads up so you're not strapping them and putting yourself in a position of not being able to collect rent and
Well,
not having
exactly.
a good quality tenant. So you're
Exactly.
taking care of yourself by having a little bit of common sense, I like to call it. But you know what? You wouldn't want it done to you. Don't do it to somebody else.
Yeah, I find a lot of tenants don't read the end date on their lease. Like they'll sign
No.
the lease for a fixed term lease. And I'll say it's a fixed term lease, starts here, it ends there.
Yeah.
Go over with them. They sign the lease, they initial each page. And still at the end, when I'm like, oh, your lease is expiring in a month. If it's somebody that I want to renew, I'll say, I'd be happy to renew your lease at this rate or whatever. Could you let me know within a week or whatever?
Yeah.
And then like people say, yes, we're renewing, or could we go to periodic or whatever, depending on their circumstances. But for people who I've had a couple times where I've said lease expires on this date and I did not want to renew it. I said, I will not be renewing it. Here is the move out inspection and here's the schedule of fees. And they freaked out and they said, you're kicking me out, blah, blah, blah. So it probably would have been smarter for me to say, I'm going to be raising the rent by, blah, blah, blah. I assumed you wouldn't want to stay. So we're not.
You know what? I'm a direct approach. I'm not renewing your lease at the end of the term. Please let me know what date and time works best for you to vacate.
Yes. Nice and clear. I love that.
I am a clear, concise person. Yep. Clear and concise.
Yeah.
Point. This is it. This is what happens.
Yes. If you're too diplomatic, sometimes people miss the point.
Exactly. Yeah. And lease breaks are a big one for the landlord. Tenants that sign a fixed term lease need to understand the implications. Like they think they can give you 60 days notice and vacate. No, that's not law. That's not law. They think they can give you 90 days notice to vacate. No, that's not law either. You owe that landlord rent to the end of the term of that lease agreement or until they re-rent the unit. So if you want to vacate in November, the worst time in the world to re-rent a unit, not a good time to think about breaking a lease agreement because you owe that landlord, and landlords don't have to agree. They don't have to agree to let you break that lease. But so it's an education lesson for everybody.
Yeah, it is. Until people sort of get in the game and understand what's going on and actually read their documents and pay attention to them.
You bet.
That's a whole other topic. So yes, education, credit checks. We haven't talked about credit checks.
Big fan of credit checks. Big fan. We have some great members that do them too at very reasonable rates. So on our website, we have some great service members that do that. There's the ones now that even do bank checks. They go dive into the banks and they don't tell you what they buy with their money. So no, they can't. Landlords can't see that you went to the grocery store and bought a steak for dinner. No, it's just basically a risk factor. So they do the credit check along with that. These guys are awesome, and the price is so reasonable that you can't say no, right? You just kind of have to do it for that peace of mind. But there's also doing reference checks and checking ID. One of my favorite ones is, and it's with scams, and it happens so many times now that check their ID. No, you can't photocopy it. No, you can't keep the driver's license, but you can check that the name and the address on there, write it down. So when you get the credit check back, it matches. That picture matches that face. I remember back when I was renting to tenants here, one of my ladies came to me and said, the lady that I just moved in is not the lady that rented the unit. And I went, what do you mean? So, and that happens a lot, where somebody would be sent in to rent the suite who has, whatever. And all of a sudden you got 6 guys moving into that suite or 10 people. And it's like, no. But there you go. So you want to make sure you catch that. But references, past landlords. Make sure that the address on the driver's license or the ID matches the credit check. If their reference for their past residence is somewhere in Ontario and they've been living in Edmonton, you can question that, right? Make sure you
I have
understand HIPAA so you know what questions you can and can't ask. The Privacy Information Act has some great information, what you can and can't ask as a landlord. You can ask for income, you can ask for references, you can ask for a lot of things. So ask for it.
I
Make
have a
sure
bit
you're
of a
putting it.
story.
Excuse me.
We used this twice, where we would get a reference from a previous landlord.
Yeah.
And we were suspicious, but we also had the address of the previous place, so we went on to the Spin website and determined who the actual property owner was. And lo and behold, the person who owned the property was not actually the person whose name was given to us.
Yep.
That's
There's
a
ways to find. Yeah.
that's a $10 expense,
Yep.
and it saved us a fortune because we actually managed to get in touch with the actual owner, and she said, "We evicted them. They cost us a fortune. Stay away."
See.
Best $10 we ever spent.
Yeah, you know what though? But it's so wise to do. And then at final, if you're at odds with yourself, you're going to use your gut. Like I don't know, a lot of property management people have used their gut forever. You know, do I feel it? Don't I feel it? Do I feel it? But you still need that backup to know
Yep.
what you're doing, right?
It's got to be an
I know
educated guess.
yeah, we had the
You-
privacy commissioner
you
talk
put-
at one of our webinars about Facebook and going to social media and seeing different things. You know, it's not the best way to do anything, but if they're on social media and they have two big German shepherds that are moving in with them, and you can see them, right? Sometimes you can see there's two dogs going into your little tiny one-bedroom apartment.
That's
So
no pets.
yeah, but you could ask. You know what? Then you could ask the question, right? There's no pets allowed, just so you're aware. You know, things like that. But there's ways. There's a need for landlords to do their due diligence. If somebody is moving into their place that they spent a lot of money getting ready, and that's part of what they do. They need to
Yes.
do that.
Yes. I want to mention with credit checks, you need to make sure that you get permission to run a credit check.
Oh yes,
I have a
absolutely.
form on my website that is permission to run a credit check, and then they sign and date it, you sign and date it, and you have to say that you're only going to use it for your property, just for this one thing. You're going to destroy it according to the FOIP bylaws.
Yeah.
You're not going to hang on to their financial information.
Yeah.
So that's very important to get that
That's
permission.
on our application, right on our application. That should be right on your application.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, you want to keep that application until they've been approved or not approved. A great keep for just, and I tried to keep them for 3 months because tenants can write if they weren't approved. They can send you a letter and ask you why they weren't approved. And so you want to make sure you have that backup open.
So now, you know what? I haven't ever had anybody do that.
Absolutely.
3 months
Absolutely.
ago,
I would
call
have tenants call me and say, why did you refuse my application? And I would say, unfortunately, if you would like to know, please send me a letter and I'd be more than happy to respond to you.
Oh, really?
So are you obligated to actually give them that information? Because I was under the impression that you weren't.
That you didn't have to.
You don't have to give them an answer,
Okay.
but if they write to you, you have to.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I learned something new. I didn't know that.
So you should, yep, you have to give them an answer if they write to you. It's because they could, you know what, they could take you to RICA, they could take you wherever they want to take you. Whether anybody's ever done that, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
You know, in all my life, I think I've had 3 that wrote me a letter that said why.
And then what do you answer? Do you just
I
give
tell
them
the truth.
Okay.
Usually if I didn't accept somebody, it was purely a reference check or a financial situation.
Right.
You know, I often didn't have a problem telling them right away why they weren't approved. I'm really sorry, your references didn't check out. Your credit check wasn't very good. You know, I'm sorry, but this is how we work, right?
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I
Gotta
worked
be
for
fair.
a large corporation at one point, and people would come in and they'd want to know if they were approved or not approved.
Yeah.
And they'd freak out when they weren't approved. And
Yeah.
But I mean, they knew they had bad credit. So
Yeah, and or there was that, here's my address, here's where I used to own my house, and then when you look on the credit check, they've been renting from 12 places and they owe 8 land. there's things that happen all the time, right? Just
Although
doing
my
your due
experience,
diligence.
my experience with those people is they're not going to challenge you because they'll know you know.
Yeah. As soon as you say I'm doing a credit check, they'll say, "Oh, okay, I'm out."
Yeah.
Or they'll
Yeah,
be honest.
I always tell people during my actual pre-screening, by the way, I would like to tell you about my application process and just to let you know, and if you're okay with that, we can proceed to a showing. And if they're not okay with it, and I'll say I check landlord references, work references, I do a credit check. And if they start arguing with me, I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to look at my property. There are other places you can see.
You don't have
And
to rent there
Nelda,
then. There's choices, right?
Nelda also asks, when we do a credit check, is there anything you want to tell us? Because
Good idea. Great
Yeah.
idea. You know,
It
like
could
that
be-
one fellow.
No,
told
there
that
isn't.
lady,
And I had no
"The
idea. I
board-
had 5 collection agencies after me when you get the report back. That's happened to me before too, where,
Have
you
you
know,
ever had
one guy
people
had-
not know? Have you
yeah,
ever
he
had
had,
people rent
he had
that don't
5
know?
collection agencies after him, and I thought, you know, and so he did ask me why he didn't get
And
accepted.
he didn't know.
And I said, I didn't actually answer him directly. I said, have you checked your credit rating recently? He said, no. I said, is there anything on your credit report that you would know that would cause any red flags for you or for me? And he said, no.
Maybe you want to check again.
Yeah. But then he had told me in the process that he and his wife had owned this house. It was kind of a tragic story. It sounded like the roof collapsed. There was all this structural damage, and it was way more than they could afford. And she said, "Well, let's just file for bankruptcy because we can't afford this. We have to
Ouch.
let it go and move forward." He refused to do it, so they split up. And so she had bankruptcy on her report. He didn't, but he had the collections after him.
Yeah, he was
And
after everybody was after him because his half, eh?
yeah.
Yeah, that's sad.
So that was very sad, and I just thought, oh, this guy had a couple little kids, and I thought, how's he going to function? Like, how would you? He couldn't get a credit card. He didn't have good credit. How would he ever get? How would you even pay for parking? You know, if you want to park someplace without a credit card. So
Yeah.
I just was trying to think my way through his life. If I was in his situation, I thought, wow, that's so difficult. Just file for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You know, that's not ideal either, but at least you get a little bit
No.
of.
Gets rid of some of that though, eh? That's bad. That's sad. Sometimes during COVID, I heard a lot of sad stories, and I was like, it hurt my heart. I heard from more tenants would call. Tenants were calling me, and it's like, and I'm like, sorry, here's a number to call. And sometimes they just wanted somebody to listen.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one night I sat here and I actually listened to this poor guy, and then he said, thank you for just listening to me." And I went, "You're welcome." That was it. You just want it to be heard. Sometimes that's all the tenants want to do is they just want to be heard, right?
So, Donna, you missed your calling. You should have been a psychologist. You could be charging
Oh,
$110 an hour.
that'd be awesome, hey? That was in my olden days, I used to be able to charge $250 an hour for consulting fees. Now, not so much.
Kind of makes me wonder what you did, Donna.
Well, one day I'll tell you that one.
For a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if tenants want a legal answer to a question, can they call you? What would you do?
They can call, but I will put them on to somebody that can help them. I will either tell them they need to contact a lawyer, so I hope they have one. We have one on our membership list that I recommend. If they are looking for an eviction process, I give them the people we have under our directory in that category. If it's a question that I won't answer at all, just because maybe there's too much to it, I'll send them to Service Alberta for sure. I do my best to stick to, I'm an opinion. I'm not a legal advice. Far from it. I've been around the block, like I said, and I can give you some great ideas and what you're doing. And I will tell you that one of my new members came in, he says, "You're scolding me, aren't you?" And I went, "No, I'm not scolding you." I said, "You just can't do that." And he said, "Okay, okay." And he was really cute, but so I kind of like guide them to which form they need to fill out, how to do a move-in inspection, how to do a move-out inspection, why you need to do this. Send them to our website resources, but yeah, just stuff like that. Guide them to the RTDRS webpage. That webpage has some wonderful information on it. The RTDRS website has some great information. They even made little video clips or little YouTube videos now of different how to prepare your case. They give you tips. They even tell you what you should and shouldn't charge for late fees and cleaning charges now. They give you a depreciation list. They have some great information on that website. They walk you through the process of RTDRS tracking when you get an order, what you need to do. So if I don't know the answer, or if I can send you information, members will call and I'll say, I'll send you a bunch of stuff, and I'll send them all these links that they can read and look at, and they'll fall back and go, wow, I didn't know that. So a security deposit refund is my favorite one. And Simply Center for Public Legal Education Alberta has a great
Yeah,
resource,
yeah.
great resource places. So most of their stuff for landlords is on our website resource page. So
Here's one you don't want to get
great
trapped in,
resource.
is refunding a security deposit when the couple's splitting up.
Oh,
Like,
make
we
sure
don't
you
have to.
cut it in two. Just cut it in two.
Yep.
Cut it in two. Make sure you tell them both. If they were both signed, but I paid the deposit. Doesn't matter. You both signed the lease agreement. You're both getting half. That's it. Not
Yes,
fighting
yeah, we know
anymore.
that. If both your names are listed as a tenant, you both get it. If one's a tenant, the other one's an other occupant, just the tenant gets it.
Just the 10. Yeah,
But I want to ask you one last question before we wrap up.
absolutely.
How does ARLA advocate for landlords?
Oh, I love listening to the City of Edmonton meetings all the time. So I will make sure I stay on top of all of the topics that are imperative to the rental industry. Um, Last year, well, since 2020, 2021, 2022, I advocated, not advocating so much as speaking on behalf of our membership, getting our members involved, sending out letters. We did a big waste campaign. So as a landlord with a multifamily unit, you pay per unit. So you pay $30.69 per unit per month to have your garbage removed, communal waste. That is your recycling, which is not mandatory, and it is your ecosystem, which you still pay for when you get there, and it's your normal garbage. So they dictate where it goes, how many times you get picked up, and how big it is, and you pay a fortune. So that same service that you pay, say $800 or $2,700 for a month, commercial sector pays $800 a month for that.
Huh.
Private sector, you could get it done for close to the $800 a month. So we advocated for the landlord to get our garbage back. So we had Boardwalk in the room, One Properties in the room, Main Street in the room. There was large end landlords in the room, and small end landlords and condos. They were flooded with over 350 letters from our membership, and from CCI Group was involved with us as well. So we kind of band together to make a bigger impact. They still didn't listen to us. So they're now debating the budget, and I know the waste is up again. And we said, you could give us our garbage back. It'll be free to you. You don't pay anything. We'll take care of it. We'll start right now. We'll start doing organic separation ourselves right now. We can do that. You have to go through all these processes and more costs. You have to spend more money. Guess what they're doing right now? They're spending more money. They need to hire full-time staff. They need new trucks. They need new bins. They need to go to every landlord and make sure that they can take away this parking stall or this parking stall. So I sent him a letter recently that says, I remind you of what we said we would do, and now what you're doing. So instead of letting us do it with no cost to the city, you choose to add another, I think it's 86 million to the budget for the waste industry. So there you go. But so there was licensing of property managers has recently come up, and it's still in the works. So I make sure I listen to that and I stay apprised of that. So I'm ready to jump on it and make our membership aware. Last year, pesticide, the pesticide was brought up that they wanted to ban pesticides on your properties, not just condominiums and multifamily, residential properties, your home. They were banning that. So we got on the bandwagon. We sent it out all to all our members. They were flooded with paperwork, flooded with it, and so that got thrown out. So thank goodness for that one, because that would have been a
I
disaster.
was going to mention something, because a lot of times I remember listening to this fellow who was ranting and raving about how he wrote this one letter one time and nothing changed.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes several attempts by several people to get things done. I've worked in corporate education for many years.
Yep.
And with large
going.
organizations, you have to keep trying.
Yep, keep going. And I keep going. Just keep going. Like the licensing one is huge. The derelict properties one, they were constantly saying that the derelict properties in the areas are all landlords. And like I sent a letter to about 8 of them, and I just said, derelict properties are not all landlords. Let me go there. Those are property owners that own those units. They're not landlords. They're property owners that own those units. So you just have to sometimes jump on things. And you can go on their website. You can send an email letter to every one of the counselors in 3 seconds. Easy as pie. But so we try to make sure, or I try to make sure that we're aware of every issue that's coming up and we're prepared. So we also have a political action reserve fund that we have put aside. We put money into it as often as we can. Hopefully it's every year. Our bottom line is not for profit, so we try to put a little bit every year into it. So we have enough money to advocate on those issues that come forward for our landlords. So
because
and
yes,
that's
there's
where we're
strength in
going.
numbers. Yeah, the 4 people
Yeah,
who founded
exactly.
discovered they didn't have strength on their own.
Yeah.
The more clout you have, the more
You
numbers
need support.
you, the more support you have, the more clout you have, the more weight you have.
You know, like a lot of people say, I don't really come to the lunch. I say, yeah, but you are support for the membership. We need that support. And so they'll say, I get it now. Okay. So you know, like there's a lot of issues. I sit on the RTAC committee, so I can get my voice being heard on the RTA. You know, and you're right. They sometimes don't listen. It sometimes takes many years. The waste one went from, I worked with 2 councils on that one. The first council was starting to come around a bit. And then I got a new council and it was like, poof, gone. I was like, wow, that was fast.
Well, it was when they were talking about legalizing suites in Calgary.
Oh,
When we first moved to Calgary, and
yeah.
at first our area was not zoned for illegal suites, but all of the houses in my block have illegal suites or had illegal suites. And then they were talking. The city came in and they talked to this organization that I was in at the time. They were talking to them about what the process was going to be and the costs, and I thought, oh, these guys are going to get lynched. Because people were just up in arms. They were saying, "Are you kidding me? Like, that's so much money. Like, we're already spending money on blah blah blah." So anyway, they because of all of the landlords who rallied, they knocked it way back. They ended up rezoning my area that I live in and changed it so that you could have legal suites.
Oh,
and then they
thank goodness.
grandfathered a lot of things in. So, well, we already had a suite in the house when we bought it.
Yeah.
So it only ended up costing me $2,500 to get the suite legalized. So
Nice.
that is very affordable.
Yeah,
and I have to say
numbers.
that the city jumped through hoops to be nice to me and to explain things to me, to get on the phone and call me back whenever I called them and asked them questions. They were wonderful.
Nice.
Fort McMurray, if I wanted to get my suite legalized in the house that's there right now, it would probably cost me upwards of $40,000.
Yep, I was going to say, you'll never get it there.
Could not get a straight answer from anybody. Nobody would get back to me. Everybody was very defensive when I called and asked questions. It completely different. So don't underestimate the power of numbers, because they really do make a difference.
Yeah.
So on that note, if people want to get in touch with ARLA, they want to get in touch with you, how do they get hold of you, Donna?
You can go on our website, www.albertalandlord.org. And again, I stress org.org, please. Or give the office a call, 780-413-9773. We're there Monday to Friday. Give me a call.
And the big burning question I've saved till the end, how can you get my book? You can get it on Amazon.ca, Canadian Landlord's Handbook, Landlord Fundamentals 101, Nelda Schulte. And it's $1.49 if you buy the ebook version. $18 if you want the actual physical copy. And there's a special place in heaven for you if you buy it, take a picture. If you liked this video and you like this information, like us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, like us on LinkedIn, like us on Twitter. And tell all of your friends and all of their family and all of your colleagues, anyone who could use support, because that's what we're here for. We're here to support landlords.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Donna, for sharing your information. It was really
fun.
wonderful. I learned.
I'll do it again sometime.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Yeah. So have yourself a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Oh, I hate to do that, but you're right. Happy holidays, right? Happy holidays already. It's like I look at this is our last week for our events. So one of our events this week is our Jingle and Mingle. So if you're not doing anything December 8th there, come on down. We'll have some Jingle and Mingle. But yeah, our last 2 events are this Thursday and Friday.
Yes. Well, sorry, I've got a super busy week. I'm actually doing another 3 podcasts on other people's channels.
Well, next time.
You know, I always talk about driving to Edmonton. It should be, you know, when they do distances on Google Maps, it should be like weather where it says it's minus 15, but it feels like minus 27. The drive from Calgary to Edmonton, it's supposed to be 3 hours, but it feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
I've just driven it so many times.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yes, but
Thanks for
anyway,
the
You guys
update,
have
by
a
the way.
super Christmas and a super holiday. Look
Thank you,
forward
I
to
will.
seeing you next year.
yes, you too.
Thanks,
My
Kate.
pleasure. Bye for now.
Bye bye.
See you later.